if you're not used to making changes to your golf swing, it will be really hard to start with. So making changes is a skill in itself, okay? And an example of this, give you two extreme examples so you can get my point, get the idea. So someone, say, who's been playing golf for 30 or 40 years, never had a lesson, doesn't really even know how he's swinging the club, may have sort of learnt the process such a long time ago, doesn't even know how he's doing it, he's just going up and he's just hitting the golf ball and swinging and playing. And then that guy has a golf lesson, and even the tiniest of movement feels completely alien and weird, and like they can't even hit the ball. And not only is that they've got to do little movements, they've got to do big changes because their golf swing's a mess. It's going to be really hard for them to change. Okay, they're not used to making changes. The changes, they're so grooved in their movement, the changes feel really weird. They're really far out of position, so the changes feel so far detached from where they've been. It's a really hard place to be. So let's go to the other side of the scale. Someone who has also played golf for a long period of time, but has regular lessons. Say someone's played golf for 10 or 20 years and they've been having fairly regular lessons all the time. You know, they'll go and maybe they'll have 5 or 6 in a row to work on something that they're struggling with, or they'd have had like 20 or lessons or so over a period of time when they first started. And then they'll go through periods where they'll have a lesson once every 6 months, or even have a couple of years off but come back to it. So they're always getting tips, and you know, they now know their golf through the golf lessons. They now know their tendencies really well. They know their golf swing really well. They also know how to make changes because they've made so many changes over the years through having continual lessons. So they might go and have a lesson, and you know, the right elbow's creeping up the shaft steep, so then he'll work on bringing that down and get it back. Then he might come, you know, 2 years later or a year later, he's having a couple of lessons again. He notices his head's moving off, so he brings it back. And he'll keep having, over these periods of lessons, keep tweaking the swing and trying to perfect it and keep it all in nice and tidy and stop it coming out of place. He's going to be really used to making changes. So then if you ask him to make a change, if he's suddenly creeping a bit in here and you try and get it more in plane, it's not going to be so weird because they've got used to making changes. They've developed that skill. So you can see with two different people on opposite ends of the scale, and I mean another example of the one that would struggle, maybe a complete beginner who's not only never made changes, they've never swung a golf club virtually. So, you know, that's really hard to try and get them doing new movements, you know, especially if they've just learnt the part of the golf swing and they start playing and practicing a little bit, and then they come back for a lesson 2 weeks later and they've developed a new bit of a bad habit with it already, and then you try and correct that and they're not used to making those tweaks. The whole thing is new. So you've got these guys that might struggle, that have never made changes, whether it's because they're brand new to golf or because they've never had lessons, they've never worked on their swing. Or the guy at the other end of the scale who has lessons all the time, is used to making little changes and little tweaks, and to him making a change is no big deal because he's used to it. Even if it's a change he hasn't made before, he's used to it. Chances are, if an error creeps in, it's probably something he's already worked on at some point in the past, which makes it even easier for him because he's done it before. He might have done it before several times. It's like, oh, you're back in there again, Bob. Oh, okay, yeah, let's get it back on plane. Yeah, easy peasy, there we go, back on track. So you can see making changes to your golf swing is a skill in itself. It's a skill that needs to be developed. So if you're not used to making changes and you think it's really tough, it's really hard, you don't feel you can do it, like I mentioned before, stick with it. Do the exaggerated drills, get you out of your habit. You know, maybe make other easier changes first, simpler changes first to get you used to making changes, and then go back in and tackle the really hard things that you're struggling with. But you will find it easier. All your changes will get easier the more you practice them and the more you practice changing your swing. Obviously, it's only to a point. At some point, you're going to get to the stage where you're no longer changing your swing, you get settled, then you refine it and hone it through practice.